Hello everyone, and welcome to the final game we'll be showing from the 2013 Candidates Tournament. It's the game you've all been waiting for, Vassily Ivanchuk versus Vladimir Kramnik. And as you've seen in my previous video, Magnus Carlsen lost his last round game against Peter Svidler. If you haven't seen that video, do check it out. It will be the first thing you will see in the description below, as you definitely want to check out that video before watching this one. It will do wonders for your vast knowledge. Now, it's not like Carlsen lost his game and then Kramnik knows that he can just draw this game and become the challenger to Viswanathan Anand, as both games were played simultaneously, which could be one of the reasons why Magnus Carlsen got in time trouble for the first time in this tournament, because, you know, he made a move, then he had to, walk a little, check out Kramnik's position, then Kramnik made a move, also he was constantly watching Carlsen's position. So, you don't want to play like the best move and end the game quickly in a draw. Then Kramnik would know, okay, I can simply draw my game and, I must win the game, and then I'm the challenger. So we do have some photos before we actually check out the game. Here we have Ivanchuk ready to make his first move. Then we have another nice photo of Ivanchuk. So I think making the third move in this game. And another nice photo from the opening. There's Vladimir Kramnik and Ivanchuk doing one of his things. We do have some more photos, but those will come after this game. So let's see it. We have d4, d6, e4, and knight to f6. Just a second. All right. So the Pirc defense, and it's very interesting why Kramnik chooses this defense for the first time. He says he wants to keep all of his options open, so you can't play something that was drawn like so many times during this tournament or during some other games. He has to wait and see how Carlsen's game will go, and then try to create something. Knight to c3, g6, and knight to f3. So Ivanchuk goes for the classical variation, not the f3, bishop e3, queen d2. So knight to f3. Bishop to g7, bishop to e2, so the so-called quiet system. We have castles, a6, h3, knight to c6, bishop to g5, b5 now, a3, h6, all pretty standard moves. Bishop to e3, that h6 pawn could become a target in the future. We have e5, d captures, and here Ivanchuk avoids the trade of queens and goes queen to c1. And now this queen to c1, it's not a very active square for the queen, but it does come with a tempo because the h6 pawn is now under attack. So king to h7 and bishop to c5, activating this bishop very nicely, and now the rook on f8 is under attack. Rook to e8 and now rook to d1, attacking the queen. The queen doesn't really have anywhere to go because e7 is covered by the bishop, so a lot of activity here for Ivanchuk. Bishop to d7, blocking. Now comes b4, queen to c8, getting the queen out of this pin from the rook. We have queen to e3, and now knight to d8. Preparing ideas like knight to e6 in the future. Ivanchuk goes a4. We have b captures on a4, knight captures on a4, and now comes knight to e6, attacking the bishop on c5. Bishop to c4, and now knight to h5. Grabbing the bishop does seem like like a nice idea, winning the bishop pair, eliminating a strong piece, but after knight captures, black doesn't really have a lot of options here. You have to defend the f7 pawn after rook e7. Bishop can capture on a6, you just want a pawn, queen moves, now comes rook b1, and it will be too easy of a position to play for white. White is already up a pawn, and with so much activity, could be that it's even a winning position. So after bishop to c4, we have knight to h5, preparing to bring the knight over to f4, knight to c3, and now knight h to f4. Knight to d5, now a nice central square for the knight, also challenging the knight on f4. Bishop to b5, we have bishop to b3, and now bishop back to c6. Rook to a5, now with the idea that if knight captures on c5, rook captures, or even better, queen captures. We have bishop captures, knight captures, queen captures, and again It's a wonderful position for white to play. c4 is coming, and the a and c7 pawns are very weak. So after this, rook to a5, queen to b7. We have g3 now, kicking the knight away from f4. Knight captures on h3, a pawn sacrifice, a very nice one by Ivanchuk. King to g2, knight to g5, and now rook to h1. So Ivanchuk sacrifices a pawn to start an attack against Kramnik's king using the h-file. King to g8, getting the king away from h-file. Knight captures, and now f3, enforcing that e4 pawn. And now comes bishop captures. Bishop captures and c6, blocking that bishop. Bishop back to c4, and now that you look at this position, Vladimir Kramnik is up a pawn, but Ivanchuk did start an attack. He has a very nice rook on the open h-file, and he does have the bishop pair, which fully compensates for the extra pawn. We have queen to c8 and queen to b3, now with a double attack on the f7 pawn. Although the knight is defending it, but the knight on g5 will be challenged. So h5, bishop to e3, now attacking the defender of the f7 pawn, and knight back to e6. Rook h to a1. Now that Kramnik defended on the king side, Ivanchuk will now transfer his attention back to the queen side and the weak a6 pawn. We have h4, as Ivanchuk's king is also a bit loose there, as he did move all of the pawns, so Kramnik wants to break open. We have g captures on h4, now comes queen to d8, attacking the h4 pawn, and rook captures on a6. And here is a very interesting position. At the time this move was played, now Kramnik has to make a choice. The best move here is actually rook captures on a6, but if you do this, if you play the best move, then comes rook captures, queen captures on h4 of course, but then bishop captures on e6. Rook captures, rook a8 check, king to h7, and now rook to a1, with rook to h1 being a terrible threat. Both queen and king are on the h-file, and in this position Kramnik would either have to move the king back and allow rook back to a8 check, or figure out something, but definitely out of this position Kramnik would not achieve more than a draw. And at the time this position was on the board, before Kramnik had to make this decision, Magnus Carlsen still had kind of a drawish position against Peter Sviller, so he wasn't lost yet. So Kramnik thought, if I play the best move, I may, do well in this game, but I'm not going to become challenger to Viswanathan Anand. So instead, Vlad doesn't go for rook captures on a6, instead he plays rook to c8, which is the engine's second favorite move. And okay, he avoids the trade of pieces, and the game goes on. Ivanchuk proceeds rook to h1, rook to c7. Now the knight on e6 can move, as the rook is now defending the f7 pawn, but bishop captures. And now it doesn't matter if f captures or if rook captures, Ivanchuk's next move will be the same. In the game, rook captures on e6 was played, and now comes b5. b5 because if pawn captures, then rook captures on e6 is coming. Pawn captures, queen captures, and after king moves, queen captures on g6, and this position will be too easy to play for white. h5, h6 is coming, bishop can come to g5. It's a very unpleasant position, basically a winning position for Ivanchuk. So after b5, rook to b7, now the b pawn is pinned as the queen is on b3. We have b6 now, so Kramnik did prevent Ivanchuk's trick, but now Ivanchuk has a beautiful passed b6 pawn. c5, we have rook to b1, now improving on the b file. Bishop to f8, now defending the c5 pawn. Queen to d5, attacking the rook on b7, and queen to b8, defending. Rook b to a1, now with complete control of the a file. Rook to a8 idea will be a terrible threat. Rook to d6, attacking the queen, but Ivanchuk doesn't care. He proceeds with his plan, rook to a8. And this is due to a tactic that Kramnik might have missed, but it's hard to say, because the time control was already reached. There simply wasn't a better move. So rook captures on d5, rook captures on b8, rook captures, pawn captures, and now Ivanchuk is up a pawn, and the real problem is Kramnik cannot allow rook captures on b6. If rook captures on b6 is played, feel free to punish Kramnik for this mistake. You are Vassily Ivanchuk, feel free to pause the video and win this game. So I will give it a couple of seconds as usual. For those of you who were able to do this, congratulations, you are an excellent spotter of mistakes. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, of course, the move loses to rook to a8. And now there are no defenses, there are simply too many threats. Bishop captures on c5 and the bishop to h6. So this will this will come as an attack on the pinned piece. The rook is pinning the bishop, and once you prevent this with king to g7, okay, now you've stopped this, but now comes rook captures on f8. This is the move you basically had to find to figure out that rook to a8 was winning. Now after king captures, bishop captures c5, this comes with check, and black is down a piece and white is completely winning. So after e captures on d5, Kramnik saw that there is no way he can capture this. Bishop to d6 was played, but now rook to a6. A pretty passive square for the rook, that is true, but the rook is nicely placed on a light square, so the bishop can never touch it, and this pawn is nicely protected. Rook to b7 was played, and now simply king to f1. And it's very interesting, it was in this position, Carlsen had already lost his game against Peter Svidler. He was giving an interview during the press conference, and as Carlsen was leaving the press conference, he asked the commentators if he could see the position from the game Ivanchuk versus Kramnik, and he saw this position, and Carlsen said that Ivanchuk was completely winning here and that nothing could possibly go wrong here. And in fact, nothing did go wrong here, as it was in this position right after Carlsen said this that Vladimir Kramnik resigned the game. Why did he resign the game? Well, there is it's okay. It's only a pawn up, but there is no counterplay for black here. White can simply march his king up the board, push the pawn and win the game. If black stops this with his king, you know, prevents the king from reaching c6, the white king can simply come to c4, grab the c5 pawn, then it's going to be a 2 pawns up, push the c4 pawn. Rook to a7 is an idea. There are so many ideas here, and all of them are winning. So yeah, Kramnik doesn't hope for a miracle, as this is one of the games in this tournament. Chucky is actually not in time trouble. So yeah, basically if you look at it, Magnus Carlsen did win the tournament, but it's Chucky's last game that actually won him first place. So these are the standings after round 14, after the final round of the 2013 Candidates Tournament. Both Carlsen and Kramnik 8.5 points, the same as after round 13. Then almost they almost caught him, Peter Svidler and Levon Aronian, third and fourth place, with 8 points, only half a point less than Kramnik and Carlsen. Then Grischuk and Boris Gelfand with 6.5, Ivanchuk with 6, and Teimour Radjabov last place with 4 points. So yeah, definitely a wild tournament, and not often will you see a tournament end like this. Both players you know, had to really outperform themselves in the last round, and both Carlsen and Kramnik lost their games. But yeah, they both had 8.5 points, but Carlsen had more wins than Kramnik, so the additional criteria makes Carlsen the winner of the 2013 Candidates Tournament, and he's the rightful challenger for the title to Viswanathan Anand. And after we cover the Norway Chess Championship, then we will continue with the series Carlsen versus Anand, their World Chess Championship match. So for the end of this video, I did prepare a couple of more photos. So let's see some of them. Here we have a very nice photo. There's Levon Aronian smiling at something, and there is Boris Gelfand. Just look at him sipping on that nice glass of wine. That man really knows how to live. Then we have a nice photo of Vassily Ivanchuk. He's not the one to party, you know, the tournament did finish, but he's already reading a nice chess magazine, and he's preparing for his next big tournament. Then another nice photo. Magnus Carlsen got his medal for winning the tournament, a nice chess-themed medal. And for the end, the last photo we'll be seeing from the 2013 Candidates Tournament, a photo of all of the participants taken after the tournament. So there we have it. Radjabov, Carlsen, Grischuk, Aronian, there's Vassily Ivanchuk, not really interested in taking the photo, Peter Svidler, Vladimir Kramnik in the middle, and there is, of course, the man who takes the best photos, Boris Gelfand. And if you look at all of them, they are really all pale, like ghosts. Except Gelfand, he has a nice red color to his face from sipping all of that wine. But as we've said, that man really knows how to live. So yeah, that's the game. That's the entire coverage of the 2013 Candidates Tournament. I do hope you enjoyed it and that you've at least slightly increased your, well, already vast knowledge of chess in general. So yeah, I would like to thank William Fusco, Karl Krensky, and John Sarr for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, probably continuing the 2018 Norway Championship. And it's very sad, I will have to announce it, that Ding Liren, as there was a rest day yesterday, him and Viswanathan Anand won a cooking contest, but Ding Liren fell from his bicycle and broke his hip, so he had to go to surgery, and he will be missing his 4th round game against Fabiano Caruana today. But I will keep you informed, as we will cover at least some of the games from round 4, and we will discuss the situation some more. So yeah, thank you all, and I will see you soon.